Alright guys, so today we're going to work on some painting techniques that helps you to create a more realistic form appearance on your watercolor paintings. So what I did was start with a circle. I used a compass to draw it and a ruler back behind it. Okay, so then we're going to set up our palette with some different values of a color of your choice for our circle here to turn into a sphere. So I'm going to use blue as my basic color, and then what I'm going to do is put a little bit of watercolor and get about 4 different values working. So what I'm going to do next is swirl some of the paint from the blue in here. I'm going to make a lighter value here. So I'm going to water this down. Remember, the lighter the values, the more water you're going to add. Then I'm going to get a little bit of paint and then create just a tad bit darker shade. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to it as well. Okay, so next I'm going to go and grab a little bit more paint here, and you can see how the values are getting darker as I go. So it's always good to mix up your colors of what you need first and work in layers. Okay, so what I'm going to do first to create a nice smooth blend is to first apply water on the area that I want to blend first. So I'm going to go into it and do what we call a wet on wet technique. So I'm just going to paint water first. That's going to help it blend nice and smooth. Try to stay in that shape and in that area. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is go to my lighter values, and remember, with watercolor, if you want an area white, you just leave it white. Okay, so I'm going to go in with my lighter value here. My light source is going to come from the top here, and then I'm going to start to apply my lighter value, and remember, we want to follow that curve. And then next, I'm going to go in and grab a little bit more of the next darker value. And blend some of the color in here in the middle. The next, I'm going to grab just a little bit more of this darker value. Remember, I'm going to follow this curve. I'm going to swoop it. Get a nice rounded appearance. Just going to bring it down here a little bit. Okay, and then next I'm going to go in and grab my darker value. And just follow that curve. And then I can add more layers as I go to darken the area up. Okay, so if you get outside of the little area like I did, you can just take your paper towel and kind of dab off the color just a little bit. Alright, the other thing is, if you want an area lighter, you can dab off some of the extra color as well. Just be careful on this paper because it will kind of peel. You can just kind of wipe those off after it dries. So now I have an area that is blended from light to dark. So now we're going to do what we call a dry brush technique to do some of the shadows. Okay, so we learned that a wash is just applying color over an area. Okay, so you have a dry paper, you're applying an area with color, that's a wash. A wet on wet wash, you wet the paper first, and then you add your color, and that helps it blend really well. And then a dry brush technique is where you take the color and just go right into the palette here with the color. And then what I'm going to do is just get most of it off to have a dry brush with a lot of pigment on it. And then what I'm going to do is create what we call a dry brush in a shadow right here. It'll give you a nice little streaky appearance if you want those textures. And if I want to soften up the form here, or the shadows, I can go in and just add a little bit of water and blend it to help create a nice smooth shadow type of appearance. And of course, you'd let that dry, and then you would go in and paint in your backgrounds. You could go in with a dry brush over top of this layer after it dries. You can add layers as it goes, but this is a basic technique for creating the appearance of form. Again, you have your light source coming from a direction, your highlight, your midtone, and your shadow. And then you have a dry brush, or you have that with a wet on wet, or wet on wet, and then you have a dry brush for the shadow. And then again, if it dries and you want to go in and add a little bit more color into it, you just work the color in and then just blend it, and you can get some nice values that way. Okay. Good luck and have fun on this exercise.